There are shows with psychics.
And there are shows with doctors.
But there's no show like The Psychic and the Doc.
Your practical paranormal power unleashed.
This show synthesizes the talents of world-class medium Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, psychic explorer,
and street smart spiritualist, behavioral psychologist, Dr. Pat Vasili. All subjects are on the table and no topic is taboo. Inspiration, insight,
action, and fun as Mark Anthony connects callers with loved ones in spirit.
In tandem with Dr. Pat's fresh, no-nonsense, street smart, intuitive insights. And she is hilarious.
Extraordinary problems
require extraordinary solutions, which may come from this side
or the other side. This is The Psychic
and the Doc, and it starts now.
Wow, everybody, we want to welcome you to The Psychic and the Doc, but let me just tell you right out front, right out of the gate, 1-800-930-2819. We would love to take your calls. This is a live call-in show. Mark and I are going to spend a few minutes here. My illustrious co-host, known as the JD, I'll tell you what that means later, psychic explorer, but he's been called many things. You will catch many good things.
I've been called a lot of things.
Okay, we'll have to do a whole nother show on that. But he's been called many things in the world, and all of them have been phenomenal. You can catch him on shows like Coast to Coast. You can catch him in live events. He's going to tell you a bunch of places he's going to be. You can catch his article in Holistic Life magazine, and he'll tell you more about that because I can't wait to hear what he's writing about these days. But also, please know that this is a show and we can take as many calls as we can. However, know that you can reach out to Mark independently and schedule a much longer reading. Because this is just a snippet. The way this works is you dial in 1-800-930. Oh, let me say it's stress-free. 1-800-930-2819. Speak to Emily. Jessica, say hi to the TTN team. And then when you come on, all we ask is turn off your radio or however you're listening to us. Somebody's told us they were watching us on some TV, but thank you. I don't know what that is, but good. And then we'll come in, I will chat with you, and then Mark will do his wonder. Mark, we got a topic today.
Yes, we do.
Oh, baby.
Relax. Stress is not mandatory. That is, and stress is part of everybody's life. I mean, people say, oh, you're stressed. Well, guess what? Stress is part of life. And stress is always characterized, Dr. Pat, as you well know, as negative. But is it? I think a certain amount of stress is good because it's a motivator. I mean, if you're just complacent about everything, it's like, well, I'll get to work whenever. You know, your boss isn't going to like it if you show up 45 minutes late because, oh, you know, like being here on time would be stressful. And certainly picking up your kids from school and making sure that they're, you know, properly clothed and protected and educated and loved and all that. But there's also the stress that robs your peace, your tranquility, that nagging inner voice that's always telling you you're not good enough, you're not good looking enough, you're not talented enough. And I think that's a byproduct of the ego. The human ego is really good at tearing somebody down. And so in that respect, stress is not mandatory. Okay, when you start getting that negative thinking, we're going to have Best Holistic Life magazine, which I write for, and you can go to my website, which is afterlifefrequency.com. I just want to talk real quick. Speaking of stress, there is no worse stress than that which comes with bereavement, with the loss of a loved one. And next week, I am extremely privileged and honored to be a keynote speaker at Helping Parents Heal 2024 conference in Phoenix. Although the event is sold out, you can still be part of this incredible event online. If you go to my website, to the calendar of events, you click on where, the Helping Parents Heal is, and you can get your online pass. It is, it's a paid event, but this is a not-for-profit organization which does exactly that. It helps parents heal. And I also invite all of our listeners to visit my website, afterlifefrequency.com. Please sign up for my newsletter. And we send out newsletters about every week. It'll let you know when the Psychic and the Doc is coming up, what I'm writing about in Best Holistic Life, and also Light Circle events and other speaking engagements. In October 4th, I'll be in Virginia Beach at the Edgar Cayce Ancient Mysteries Conference.
Wow.
And I'll be presenting the Secrets, Mysteries, and Curses of Tutankhamen. So that's just the tip of the iceberg of what's coming up.
When are we going to get a sneak peek at that presentation, Mr. Mark?
Oh, well, we can talk about that when we get closer to that.
Or maybe after you do the talk, we can share some of your slides. Look.
That would be great, because there's some incredible stuff that's still coming out. I mean, they found the tomb, they meaning Howard Carter and his team of Egyptologists, found the tomb in 1922. And it took 10 years to get everything out of it, because they were real careful. And yet some of the objects are still mystifying people. And the tomb itself is still perplexing people. So I'll just leave you with that. But let's get back to stress.
Okay.
Now, Dr. Pat, we've both been entrepreneurs, or are entrepreneurs. We've both built our own businesses. I built a law firm from the ground up, and then I left it, and then I started and embarked on this path and brought Rocky on as my manager. You built the Transformation Network up, and from nothing. I mean, you started with thin air, and you got on radio because somebody made a wrong call to you, and you ended up being on radio. I mean, that's amazing. But to achieve what you have, that's involved a lot of stress, hasn't it?
It does. And let me talk about it a little bit. I want to separate what we call good stress from not so good stress. I was reading an article. I tend to like, I like research. So I tend to look at stress research in a couple different ways. I'm extremely interested in the direct relationship between stress and the body, which includes the brain. And there was a study that came out, which was an investigation study. I love this study. I mean, I don't know how people are getting the funding for this, but you go, people. You go take a look at it. And it's a study that came out in the JAMA network. And we could talk about the journal, right? That network. And it is, okay, get ready for the title. Please don't cringe, everybody. But this is the way academic titles sound. But I'm going to break it down. Metabolic profile and long-term risk of depression, anxiety, and stress-related disorders. Now, when you get that, and thank you to Dr. Korpalatis, Yu Zhang, Annika Lovick. Thank you, Dr. Ant. Thank you, doctors, all of you, for doing this. Do you know how many subjects, people, they collected from? So this is one of these studies where you're not going to poke at them and say your sample was no good. Cohort study of over 200,000 people. So the bottom line with this, after reading it and going through a lot of numbers, they're looking at biomarkers. But in the end, what they're saying is, look, in these participants, high levels of glucose, triglycerides, low levels of high-density lipoproteins were associated with future risk of depression. So they're not just talking about, they're looking at stress and why it's a predictor for the future. You know what it's like? It's like the opposite of stress. The opposite of stress, give it to me in your words, Mark. But for me, when I'm stressed, I'll tell you what I'm not doing. I am not trusting in the universe. I am questioning the path of the divine. I am thinking that this material, physical, whatever mumbo jumbo showing up on this day is driving the ship. I wish they would have really looked at some other factors, but that wasn't their study. Chances are they wouldn't get funded if they would have looked at emotional basis. And by the way, the sample was split between men and women. What do you make of that? Now, the bottom line with that is high level of glucose. Look, that is not good stuff to have.
No.
Yeah. So that's just one study this year alone.
That really is fascinating. I'm going to back up to your question. What's the opposite of stress?
Yes,
Is
please.
complacency, procrastination, because stress is it's not always negative, but it's oftentimes perceived as negative because stress is associated with something that we don't want to deal with. Either it's work, it's a deadline, stress from bereavement. I mean, nobody wants to go through grief from the loss of a loved one. Those are all stress factors. But some people, I've always been, if something's stressing me, hit it head on, deal with it. And I guess that's the way my parents were. You don't avoid avoidance, denial, procrastination were not a thing in my family. If you have my dad was a Navy SEAL. If something scares you, attack it and eliminate it. And I used to work with an attorney who was a complete procrastinator. He was always pawning his work off on everybody else, usually me, because I was the junior partner in the law firm. And he would always make fun of me because, oh, you're so stressed out. I remember one time he said, what your problem is? You over prepare for court. And I say, really? Perhaps we should ask our clients if they feel that their attorney being over prepared is a problem. And I said, coming from someone who's never prepared, how would you even know what being prepared was? And I don't want to get into all the, what he said, but I branched off and formed my own firm. Within 6 months, he had completely lost the building he was working in.
Yeah.
He developed, or his drug problem increased. I mean, it was just a complete disaster because everything stressed him out. And instead of dealing with it, he procrastinated, avoided, and tried to get other people to do it for him. And that's the problem. It's always best, if you're stressed about something, examine it. Why am I stressed about it? What is the problem? Figure out what you can fix and deal with it. You're not going to be able to fix every problem. It's like bereavement. You're not going to be able to fix it right away, but going to counseling, reading books about grief, joining an organization like Helping Parents Heal, coming to a medium, calling the psychic and the doc. Okay, these are ways that you can reach out to help alleviate stress. And so stress is a motivator in our lives, but it's also a thief. It steals a lot of enjoyment from our lives. But as in anything, and we talk about this a lot on the Psychic and the Doc, everybody, is balance. Stress is a heavy weight on the scales of enjoyment in your life. So when you take it head on and start doing things, do that deadline. Hey, all the college students, high school students that are listening, don't put off that paper till the night before it's due. Work on it, and you'll start seeing the stress alleviating, and you'll realize that you are in control, not your stress.
Now, let me piggyback on that with you. But before I do, I just want to remind everybody, tonight's show is a live call-in show. Mark and I will stop talking as soon as we get some of these phones picked up. 1-800-930-2819. Here's what I'm excited about. When I was younger, and even when I was in school and I was looking at this, the technology wasn't ready to be studied. But I had some experiences in my life that pointed to the fact that virtual reality, which we didn't call it, virtual reality was going to change the landscape of mental health. Lo and behold, July of this year, and this had to be a study that took these people a long time to do. July of this year, the review on the role of virtual reality in reducing mental health disease, specifically stress, anxiety, depression. Now, I was so thrilled when I saw this, but I was more thrilled about the results. And what they found is in this study, right? The numbers are incredible. They looked at these studies in virtual reality, and the bottom line to this is they said, this device, let's call it VR for now, this device showed immense, not like a teeny weeny beanie, immense potential in reducing mental illness while using VR. What? And then they say conclusions. Findings are in favor of the effectiveness of VR, virtual reality, in reducing stress, anxiety, and depression. A caveat, let's just be clear. And by the way, I have to quote this. This is a review, like I said. So for you on YouTube, people that monitor stuff, this is an actual study. Y'all can look it up yourself. Thank you, Sadia Saeed, Khan Badar Khan, Muhammad Abdul Hassan, Abdul Kwanyam, and Saba Sahadunan. Thank you so much for this article, y'all. I don't know how you did it, but it's amazing. What they say is, caution, insufficient evidence. They're not saying to consider virtual reality as a sole independent treatment over traditional medication. Insufficient evidence, but the results of this study were groundbreaking. You know, we've had studies before, Mark, where hallucinogenics, you can go back.
Yeah.
But to find something like our technology that can help people, I think it's incredible. People ask me what I use. They don't ask me on this show, but I get asked on other shows. They said, we've heard you talk about stress. What do you use? I said, well, I use the technology, but I use other things. I use something called the brain tap. What's a brain tap?
Yeah, that's
it's a
interesting.
Device. You put it on your head. I don't know if Linda can go get it. You put it on your head, and it's programs of, let's call them programs that you listen to while a blue light works. This is based on This is based on Benson's relaxation response. So what they've done is they've taken a book he wrote, the practices he wrote, and they've created technology, which is, it's just you put it on 15 minutes, 10, a half hour, and they're, I call them programs, but what you listen to are incredible. Singular voice, double voice. What is it doing? What it's doing is helping the brain stop with the crazy. Let's say you're worried about money.
Oh,
It
okay.
stops with the crazy, and it provides you with information about the truth of the universe. So the bottom line, Mark, is there are things now that are available in the world which weren't available 20 years ago. And yet we cannot get the right funding in organizations or mental health practices to use them.
Why do
That's
you
a
think that
shame.
is? Why do you think that is?
I think because now other countries use them. So let's just be very clear.
Right.
Other countries are going to take virtual reality and they are going to create a stress-free culture. But is it FDA approved? Is this enough study? Do you think 200,000 people? You think you should have more than that? Whatever it is we do here, we don't do enough to give people a human experience to really find out what works. I think that's sad. I do understand we have to have protection for people. But if you've ever been in front of someone that's chronically depressed, then you have to ask yourself, if they have tried everything on the planet and they have not been able to get the relief that they need, what stops us from bringing a device like a virtual reality into the equation? That's a question for me.
That's really interesting, because on one of the interviews I did on Coast to Coast, we were talking about the Ganzfeld effect. And the Ganzfeld effect is, it's red light therapy where you're laying down and they have something over your eyes that projects red light, and You block off your hearing. It's like a sensory deprivation tank without the water. And there's something about the red light which is very calming on the optic nerve. Now, I'm not telling anyone to start staring at red light bulbs. If you're going to engage in something like this, it has to be done under medical supervision. But what happens is people start going into their consciousness and their subconsciousness. Sometimes there's hallucinations, but there's a lot of things that come to the surface that people are dealing with. Now, what's interesting about what you're talking about with the, I believe you call it the brain tap, is the AI sort of guides you through the process, whereas on the Ganzfeld effect, you're free associating. And I kind of have a Ganzfeld effect a lot every morning at 4 a.m. when I wake up and then can't get back to sleep, and then all my brain wants to do is focus on the things that stress me out and that I have to do. And I don't think I'm alone in that particular phenomenon, but it's important to confront these things and to address them and also understand where it's coming from. The old-fashioned way, or an ancient way rather, meditation. I like to refer to meditation as erasing your whiteboard. Think of your consciousness as a whiteboard. You wake up and every thought that you have during the day, you write something on it. All right, by the end of the day, it looks like a pile of spaghetti. Everything from, I don't like the way I look, I hate my job, I can't stand my car, my kids are stressed. It's just all these jumbled thoughts and emotions. And what you do with meditation is you're able to erase that entire whiteboard so you can focus on one thing. So maybe what's stressing you out is money. Focus on that, or your relationship, or whatever it is. Also, your body, studies have proven your body actually believes what you tell it. If you tell your body, I am sick, you're going to find a way to be sick. If you obsess on, most Americans, most people are not happy with the way they look. Well, think about it. Yeah, you look at movie stars and all the guys have six packs and all the women are just look like they just stepped out of a magazine, these Photoshop looking people. And pop culture media has ingrained us with this. Well, that's how we're supposed to look. And if you don't, somehow you're less than that. And this causes stress. This causes a negative self-image. The ego jumps in. When you meditate, you can approach that, analyze it, and realize, deconstruct it. And instead of focusing on your negatives, focus on what's positive about you, why you're a capable person, why you're competent, why you're loving, why you're compassionate. This isn't arrogance. This is self-reassurance. And I think that's another good counter to stress, because so many people get stressed out about what they're not instead of focusing on what they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to separate a couple things for people here as we talk to this. There are several studies now also on post-traumatic stress disorder. There's a recent study done in Israel, and it really has been looking at what happens during a war. So we have to separate these things a little bit. There is stress and anxiety and so many other things that come from a tragic event in life, right? And you have to kind of put them in a category. However, the studies I just read to you did not discount that. They really did the study, and they did, it didn't matter if your stress was whether you served in a war or you had that experience or you had a tragic event in your life. But there are different kinds of stress. Worry is the killer. And a lot of people don't put worry and stress together.
No, they don't.
And it's what you just talked about, Mark. It is, are you spending most of your time thinking about a future event or lack thereof of a future event, whatever it is, that according to statistics, 70-something% of them will never happen.
Yeah.
It sucks the life. Worry, more than anything else, sucks the life out of you. That doesn't mean you don't have to deal with things that show up. We have a situation in the United States. I can't talk about other countries, but we have a situation where senior people are living below the poverty line,
Right.
where conversations are happening to cut Social Security. And you hear them, and you wonder and you think about people that's all the income they have. They don't have a big 401k. Where they work didn't give it to them, so they have some concerns. However, when you look at it, there's a difference between having a concern about something and worrying about it 24/7.
Correct.
The degree by which you can become empowered to take some kind of action will help you. What do you think about that, Mark? I mean, not everybody can.
Yeah.
If you've been so traumatized by what you talked about, bereavement is very difficult sometimes to even call into a show like this.
Oh, absolutely it is. When you brought up about Social Security and the poverty line, and I don't, we avoid politics, but I can't.
Somewhat we do.
Somewhat. I cannot believe that Social Security benefits are taxed, because the thing is,
either.
yeah, people have been paying into this their whole life, and like you said, Dr. Pat, too many of our seniors, they don't have a big 401k, or they didn't work for a business, a company that gave them a pension fund. And the thing is, taxing benefits that you've paid your whole life is just wrong. Yeah, we need to take care of our seniors. We need to take care of our veterans. When I see U.S. military veterans living on the streets, and so many of them suffer from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I was taking my dad to the VA in his last couple of years. I mean, God bless all the people that work at the VA, but the administration and the bureaucracy, they do not make it easy. They do not make it easy on these people.
No.
And I don't want to get on my soapbox about all that,
important.
but yeah, our veterans should not be living on the streets. I mean, there should be housing subsidies for veterans, because a lot of these people, they're physically injured or they're psychologically injured, suffering from PTSD.
Okay, so to your point, let me just go back to virtual reality. In the governments, how hard is it to set a V up with a virtual reality room?
Not very.
And get somebody like me in there negotiating the rate for you. Do not pay $600,000 for a VR machine. But how difficult is it to try to move some of that forward? We've got a caller. Derek, we'll get to this. Part of this today is to just make us all more aware of what's available for us. And I love what you said. The other group that I want to put in that category are our children.
Yes.
I worked in Seattle at I can't even talk about it, at a food bank. And I remember when we ran out of infant food, baby food. I remember that in Seattle. And I remember having to call around, and I remember I'm a pretty even-tempered person, except sometimes my Bronx side comes out. And I remember calling a place, and I'm not going to mention who it is, but I'm going to remember calling a store. And I was talking to their general manager. I said, look, you guys, baby food, can you donate? I don't care what brand it is. Can you donate? And what the person said to me, I'll tell you what I did. The person said to me, why should we be giving people baby food when they can't even go get a job? And I said, what is your name, sir? Got his name, got the store, major brand here. Hello, people, not going to mention it. Got in my car. And I went down to the information desk and I called for him to come down. And to this day, he probably has nightmares about that interchange. Because no matter what you think, watching a child starve, I bet you can't even imagine what that's like.
Yeah. I have babies. Maybe I can't work. I remember, then we'll get to Derek. when I was practicing law, I was defending a young man. He had muscular dystrophy, but he was a construction worker, and he was pulled over for DUI, and he wasn't under the influence, but he failed all the physical tests.
Of course.
And so, yeah, I mean, come on, he's got muscular dystrophy. And I remember the prosecutor on I was doing a motion to suppress the field sobriety test. And the judge was about as unfair as, I mean, the judge should have been wearing a sheriff's uniform instead of a robe. I mean, he was always sided with the police no matter what, except I did get through to him on this one case. And the prosecutor said to me, well, if your client has muscular dystrophy, why is he doing construction? And I said, because we're not all from upper middle class families, and I won't say the guy's name, who had every privilege handed to them. Because I knew this prosecutor was a silver spoon kid. And the prosecutor went ballistic on me. And I'll never forget my client. He goes, kick his ass, Mark. And I'm like, you're not helping. You're not. But the thing is, how condescending. My client came from a poor family.
Yeah.
He couldn't go to college. He didn't have the wherewithal. He was doing construction because it was either that or be homeless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This happened to be when I first moved to Seattle. I was doing a lot of volunteer work. And it was on a day where I had made so many calls and couldn't get a bleeping case of baby food. And I just thought, what world am I living in? And I thought, maybe I'm not asking, maybe I'm not, and this one guy was just put me over the top. I'm telling you, I got in my car, I drove like 15, 20 miles to get to this guy.
I'm glad you did that, because he's another one of these privileged people who's looking down on someone because of what they don't have.
He could have said to me, Mark, I don't have the authority. I am no, but that wasn't him. When we come back, I'm a true believer in service. I think service of others, if you don't know where to volunteer, service of others was the way I had to deal with my stress and anxiety. When I was unemployed, when I was here, when I lost my job, there was nothing else that I could do to relieve my stress and anxiety. Let's take a short break. When we come back, it's all about Derek. Hey, everybody, welcome back to The Psychic and the Doc. Let's go right to the phones. But for those of you out there, 1-800-930-2819. Emily, who do we have? Hi, Derek. Welcome to the show. How can we help you tonight?
Mark.
Hey, Derek.
I have a track record of calling in about once a year on this show when the lines are open. So I'm going to take advantage of that tonight on this topic.
Welcome.
Thank you. I had a reading with Mark in October of 2020, and it relates to some of what we're talking about tonight. I really love this topic. My grandfather had come through, and one of the messages he said to me was, tomorrow's problems will be taken care of tomorrow. And that really resonated with me, and it's something I needed to hear, because I tend to worry. I tend to think about the big questions of the universe, and sometimes that can get away from me, right? And it ends up being a source of stress where, I was almost taking on the challenges of the world, of the universe. I happen to be a social worker, so bad combination all around, right? Like,
yeah,
it helps to put some limits on what is really mine and what I need to, in this case, worry about. And I didn't realize that was a Bible verse until I was looking it up after, and I think it comes out of Matthew there, that do not worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has enough. Tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. So really helpful in just putting some boundaries around what I think about, knowing tomorrow I'm just going to think all over again.
Wow, that's very insightful. So how are you dealing with that now? Are you focusing still on tomorrow's problems, or are you working on what's happening today? Can you share that with our audience?
It's a bit of both, Mark. I mean, I still think about, the big questions and how that affects people and the work that I do in my own life, but I don't dwell on it as much. I don't ruminate about it as much. I can sort of turn it off a little better than I could before and go, you know what, I've done what I can on this issue today, whether that's in my own life or whether that's in the work that I do, and I'll pick up tomorrow where I left off, but I won't spiral about this, right?
That's a really thank you for telling us that,
thank you.
because what you've just demonstrated, Derek, is that change takes time. You said, well, I still worry about things, but not as much. You know, a lot of people think that, okay, you hear this and magically everything's going to change. As we were listening to you, I'm picking up, if you don't mind, picking up on a female energy around you. And this woman feels like she could be either on the generation above you, like the parent level, possibly the grandparent. And what I'm getting with her, she was a smoker. I mean, I'm seeing the cigarettes, I'm smelling the cigarette smoke. Looks like she liked to having her nails done, because I'm seeing red fingernails. I mean, it doesn't look like gaudy or tacky. She was very much a lady, in her demeanor and the way she projected herself. And with her passing, I'm getting it took some time for her to transition. It was a decline, and I'm getting a mental stagnation prior to passing. Now, the mental stagnation could indicate either an illness, something that was going on with her, could be a dementia, could also be medications. But the thing is, I'm getting tingles throughout my entire body, which is indicating to me that there was a neurological component to what was taking her down. And yeah, because I'm getting some seizure, spasms, convulsions right prior to passing. So for some time prior to her transition, she was fairly non-responsive. Do you recognize this person, Derek?
Someone came to mind who was on my, it was a neighbor of my parents who was on their level, and someone that I knew for a long time. I don't really know what ultimately was her cause of death, though, but everything else you said makes sense.
That's fine, Derek. I love clients like you, because someone came to mind. That's how this works. That person came to mind because in a reading, it's like a triangle. The other side's at the top. I call it the afterlife frequency. On the bottom ends of the triangle, that's me and that's you. And in this one, Dr. Pat, so we kind of have a pyramid more than a triangle here. And because it's three-dimensional. But the thing is, the person that came to mind is that person. All right. She said you were always a very respectful boy. Did you ever help a garden? Did you ever do any gardening, or did she have a garden? Because she keeps showing me mums, marigolds, all these flowers, like in a flower box. And she always talks about you being very respectful, and something with you and flowers and gardening. And I think most people like gardens and most people like flowers, but does any of that make sense?
Yeah, that's more of a reference for her. This is someone who I was actually delivered her newspaper 20 years ago, and then I helped her and her husband at the time with some computer problems and things like that. So I was helping them out, but her backyard and front yard to a lesser extent, but that was her thing, the gardening. Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's see what she has to say to you. And her advice with you. Hey, she's focusing on your knees. Have you had any issues with your knees? It feels specifically with your right knee. I'm getting this swelling. She's focusing on your knees.
That doesn't make sense right now.
Okay, I'm going to say be on the lookout and be careful, because I'm getting this swelling. It's what do you call it? When the patella, the fluid there starts
edema.
rubbing.
Sometimes edema and
edema. And also, do you climb a lot of stairs? Do you have to go up and down a lot of stairs, Derek?
I can. I have an elevator. I have 4 flights of stairs as well, but
Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say keep taking the elevator. Keep taking the elevator.
Well, it's funny. I'm wondering. A couple things come to mind. First of all, I just got an e-bike this summer, so I've been biking a lot, and I haven't for years. So maybe I'm setting myself up for failure there. The other thing, though, is my father, who this is their neighbor.
Yes.
He's got injections in his knees for about 10 years now.
Okay.
Connection to him,
Bingo. Ding, ding, ding. That's it. So dad's still here on planet Earth. He's getting the injection in his knees. Okay. Hold on. It's interesting. She describes your father as a cornucopia of knowledge. Now, that is a very interesting term. Would you describe your dad as being quite intelligent and versed in a lot of different subjects and topics?
Yeah, his whole side of the family was, though, and I mean, my uncle in spirit, maybe more so his brother, because he was a real history buff. But yeah, my dad for sure, and also a real handyman. He's a electrician, so he's you know, probably helped them out over the years too, and done some work. So yeah.
Okay, hold on. Let me. They've got one more thing, and wow, I'm just being overcome with spearmint. Spearmint, mint, peppermint, spearmint. What is with mint with you? Do you love it? Do you hate it? The other thing with peppermint is also useful in digestive issues and to help ward off headaches, specifically migraines. Is there anything with you with either migraines or lesser headaches or digestion? Because I am just getting inundated. I'm tasting every type of mint that there is.
Yeah, the peppermint, that came up, not from this person, that came up during my reading with you, and I think the connection is more to digestion.
Okay.
I've struggled with that for a while, but yeah, that came up before. So
Dr. Pat, digestion, stress, take it away.
Hi, Derek.
What a setup there, right?
Yeah. Well, you're actually looking at somebody that's having a lifetime of knee stuff until COVID, until the pandemic, where I decided to get both knees replaced. And to be honest with you, I don't even remember what it was like to have that much pain. And, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, for you to do that, but I am going to talk about a couple of things. Can you tell me a little bit about your biking? When did you start to bike?
Oh, I just I got back out on that.
A couple of years?
No, June, couple months.
Thank you. Two things I want to tell you about biking, because I play a sport and I have to do things to get my knees good for a sport, and biking is one of them. One of the things when you get back out there, and knees are very funny. So I'm just going to tell you, I'm not a medical doctor. I can only share my experience with you. Anytime I do something like that, I have to ice my knees, not because they hurt, but because I've worked them in a way that they haven't been used to. And so there are just some things you can do. But on the other hand, there's also a spiritual meaning for what Mark described. And, you know, part of the meaning of that is whenever something like that happens, it represents friction, and it also represents resistance. Okay, from a conceptual perspective, right, Derek? And without you going into a lot of things about your life, I just would like you to really take a peek and see what parts of your life are causing friction and resistance. Friction and resistance, meaning, is something begging you to surrender? And you believe me, you don't have to share anything on this show. I just would like you in the next 7 days to really be mindful of that. Also, knees represent, this is tied into it, right? I'm not going to get too crazy with you today, but I will share a little bit about it. You know, the idea of kneeling, right? We kneel. And the idea of kneeling, we kneel, people kneel when they pray, they kneel for different reasons. There are different gestures, right? But it's a form of surrender. And so the fact that Mark brought that up doesn't mean you have a physical problem with your knees. So I just want to be clear. However, I still would stretch before you ride and ice after you're done. But explore parts in your life right now. What's the word? I'll tell you what's coming up for me, where you feel like you're banging your head up against the wall. And it could be anything. It could be relationship. It could even be you trying to get your dad, tell your dad to like get them knees replaced. Whatever that is, take a look at that. Because there may be something underneath going on for you that's driving what I like to call worry, or looking at the future, or not being able to stay in the present. And I'm not kidding. I have to use my brain tap.
Yep.
And, you know, I'm somebody, I like to look at the future, but how I look at the future is more important than what I look at in the future. So I would consider some of those
Right.
things from a symbolic point of view of what Mark said. Mark, right?
Yes, 100%, 100%. And a lot of times, switching tracks just a little bit,
Mhm.
stress causes digestion issues.
Oh, yeah.
So the
Yeah.
peppermint is, I mean, think about it, a lot of like antacids have a peppermint flavor to them, but peppermint
Mhm.
has for centuries been used for digestion
Mhm.
to help it. It also helps ward off migraines. And once again, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm just sharing the knowledge that's been imparted with me. But when it's interesting that peppermint has come up again with you. The other interpretation for peppermint for me is a significant birth, death, anniversary, or event within the month of December. Why? Because candy canes and peppermint. And the other thing could be somebody connected to you, either on planet Earth or in spirit of significance, a Pat, Patrick, or Patricia. And because peppermint is a trigger for peppermint patty, which could be the candy or Pat, Patrick, or Patricia. Is there any significant births, deaths, anniversaries, or events connected to you within December, or any Pat, Patricks, or Patricias, Derek?
I have a sister born in December. I remember you going through that list 4 years ago, and I still don't know what the what the right answer is.
No, that's fine, because in readings, in spirit communication, your interpretation is more important than mine. Those are my interpretations. Something that happened recently, I was doing a reading for this woman, and her husband's spirit came through and said to me, igloo. And I'm like, igloo? I live in Florida. It's not like igloos are a thing here. You're in Ontario, so maybe igloos are a thing there. And I'm like, igloo? I said, I got nothing on that one, because usually I have something. And she starts freaking out, going, oh my God, my daughter just moved to Alaska. And I was talking to her on the phone yesterday because she's getting married. And she goes, Mom, it's the weirdest thing I found out. My wedding planner used to live in an igloo. She said, do you think that's what my husband's talking about? And I was like, well, do you have another igloo story? And we were laughing. She was really cool. But what it is, your interpretation is always more important than mine. I am just the conduit for the information. So I'm going to go with the digestion and the stress. And you are learning to modify the way you look at stress and handle it, but also be mindful that it still does take a physical toll on you. I've read, and once again, not a medical doctor. Dr. Pat and I are we are not medical doctors, but a lot of people that do lots of caffeine or stimulants, that artificially recreates what stress does to your body. But like anybody, I like a good cup of coffee to get me going and doing stuff. And I'm a writer. You pump me full of caffeine, and I'm going to write some stories. But the thing is, you also have to be mindful of the amount of stimulants that you put into your body. And this gets back to what Dr. Pat and I are always talking about, is balance.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm telling you what really is coming through for me is anything that comes up for knee, whenever I'm working and coaching, and I mainly work with women, but anytime I'm doing this, it turns out to be there's something in a power struggle. There's something in having a position about something, and they don't have to be big things. They could be something going on where you're just locked into a position. That's what the knees represent. And the fact that Mark was talking about a condition that you don't have, right, physically showing up in your body, knees represent trembling. They represent fear. But I would really think about, is there a position you're holding on to, whatever that is, that you just are having a hard time moving the needle on? I'm not telling you to give in, and I'm not telling you to surrender, but I'm also telling you the fact that December came up, and I want to tell you who rules December: Jupiter. And when you put Jupiter and the sign of Sagittarius along with Capricorn hovering around those months, right? When you're really starting to look at those two power planets, those two battle each other all the time. Jupiter is a power planet. It's a large planet. Anytime Jupiter comes up, like in this Lion's Gate, Jupiter trine. So something for you to think about in your life somewhere that there's just a little bit of something going on with, okay? I honestly think you'll find it.
Yeah, no, I do appreciate that. And actually the sort of symbolic look at the knees or friction or something is another thing that, you know, that's a lifelong trait. You know, one of the other things that came up in my prior reading was, you know, less about what others want from me and more about what I want in life.
Yeah.
Because it is easy to just you find yourself in situations sometimes.
Yeah, no kidding. Derek, thank you so much for calling in. Yeah, thank you. I'd be curious to see what shows up for you over the next 3 days around this. Jot some notes down.
I'll jot some notes down and call you in a year.
Okay, call me in a year. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek.
Yeah, I want to talk about this for the audience that was listening, because a lot of times, Mark, when something comes through, it comes through from multiple people. And this particular one is really powerful, and it really taps into the Lionsgate show we did, because this is a time for us to really look at where we're power struggling now.
Yes.
Because if we are power struggling, and I don't care who it's with, it could be a person, it could be your job, it could be an institution, but if we are grunting and groaning about something that is, one, we don't have a lot of control over, but also, two, if we're grunting and groaning and start to feel a sense of helplessness, this is also leveled in the knee. It's also leveled in the gesture of humbling oneself to a higher authority, which doesn't really work well.
Wow. That's extremely insightful. And, you know, when we were talking about stress and worry, right now, I know that we have fans that and audience members in Puerto Rico, and I know for a fact we have people that follow us in Bermuda.
Yeah.
They're dealing with Hurricane Ernesto, and Bermuda. Poor Bermuda has like a huge target on it for hurricanes, and it's just because of its placement in the Atlantic with the Gulf Stream. And I remember a tremendous hurricane heading towards Florida, and this is a couple years before my dad died, and I was like really worried about it. And he said, Mark, don't stress, don't get scared, because there's nothing you can do about it except be prepared. And that's my message for everybody. Many of the things that stress us out, prepare for it. Okay? Instead of sitting there worrying and feeling like a victim, be prepared. There's nothing you can do about some of the terrible things that happen in life, but you can ready yourself. And obviously, in the case of a hurricane, you put up the shutters and do what have you. But this can be applied to several things.
Yeah.
So we're going to be back next week. We're going to have a show featuring Jana Short, the editor-in-chief of Best Holistic Life magazine. And she's going to be back with us in October when her new book, The Yet Factor, comes out. So Dr. Pat and I, the psychic and the doc, will once again be on the clock. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Take care.
Hey, everybody, thank you for tuning into The Psychic and the Doc with Mark Anthony and me, Dr. Pat Basile, right here on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Hey, look, come back next week so we can explore with you more of life's many challenges and learn from fascinating guests. And you know what? Even Mark and me. We'll connect you and discover insights from people in this life and from the afterlife. Extraordinary problems? Yeah, they do. They require extraordinary solutions. But step into the world of possibilities with us on The Psychic and the Doc. That's every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on TransformationTalkRadio.com. That's TransformationTalkRadio.com. And don't forget, we're also live face-to-face on Facebook.com, Transformation Talk Radio.